Welcome back to Priestess Initiations, the Goddess Coven. I'm Casey. This is episode 9, and today we're talking about Isis, the great assembler, the one who gathers what's been scattered, the goddess of resurrection and wholeness. And the timing of this episode is really perfect, because astrologically, the asteroid Isis, and almost all the goddesses, but not quite all of them, but most of the goddesses we talk about here have asteroids associated with them. There's a little thing on our website where you can start to look up where those might be in your chart. It kind of guides you through that. Okay, but anyways, the goddess Isis, her asteroid is going to be opposing the sun on December 26th, 2025. So that's the day after Christmas for many. And Isis is a great healer archetype, great mother archetype. So any family wounds that arise over the holidays, she'll be there to help heal on the other side. More than that, though, when an asteroid's opposing the sun, and some of you might already know this, but essentially that means that it forms a straight line directly across from the sun, and therefore is at its most illuminated, most visible, though usually still too faint for the naked eye. But whether you have a telescope for viewing or not, Isis will be lit up, her energy illuminated by the sun on December 26th. So if you resonate with her as I'm talking about her in this episode, or maybe you're even listening on the 26th, great alignment, it's a great time to work with Isis energy. And so I will be linking to a meditation on Isis on our Patreon that you can do at home. And it's actually the same one that really activated her energy for me. And I'll be talking about that a little bit more later. But let's start with who is Isis, right? So Isis teaches us that nothing is ever truly lost. That what's been broken carries the memory of its wholeness. That the work of gathering the pieces of yourself, of your life, of your soul is the most powerful magic of all. If you've ever felt fragmented, if you've ever had to reassemble yourself after something was shattered, if you've ever had to create what's missing instead of just recovering what was lost, you've met Isis. So starting with who Isis actually is, because the story you've been told is incomplete. Or maybe you haven't heard of her. Or maybe you've heard of the word Isis, but not the goddess. The goddess Isis, before she was worshipped across empires, before the Greeks renamed her mysteries, before patriarchy tried to diminish her into just wife and mother, Isis was called a Set, she of the throne. The throne itself was her body. Pharaohs sat upon her lap to receive legitimacy. She was not seated upon power, she was power. And before Osiris was murdered, before the scattering, Isis was already a great and revered healer. She was known throughout Egypt for her magic, her wisdom, her power to heal what others could not. She was sovereign in her own right, not defined by her husband, but complete unto herself. But the story they tell most often is the one where she seems small. Devoted wife, grieving widow, searching desperately for pieces of her murdered husband Osiris, weeping, defined by her love for a man. Let me tell you what they missed. When Set, Osiris's brother, god of chaos and violence, murdered Osiris and dismembered his body, scattering the pieces across Egypt, he believed he was destroying power itself. He thought that what is broken cannot rule, that what is scattered cannot return, that fragmentation is final. He did not understand the nature of feminine power, how it gathers, how it remembers, how it resurrects. Isis did not search because she was weak, and love is not weakness. She searched because she understood something Set could not, that everything broken contains the memory of its wholeness, that what has been scattered yearns to return to itself, that the work of gathering is the most powerful magic of all. And yes, of course, she searched for love. She loved Osiris wholly and deeply. She grieved him. She mourned him. And her love was part of her power, not a diminishment of it. This is what patriarchy struggles to metabolize, that love can be powerful. that devotion can be sovereign, that you can search for someone you love and be doing it for yourself, for the principle of wholeness, for the understanding that when you heal the beloved, you heal yourself. So Isis, she walked the breadth of Egypt, maybe even farther, some say around the whole world, collecting not just Osiris's body, but stories, wisdom, tears, and transformation. With each piece she found, she became more herself. This was devotion to a man she loved, yes. And it was devotion to the principle of wholeness, to the understanding that nothing is truly lost, only waiting to be remembered. When she discovered that one piece, the phallus, could not be found, it was consumed by a fish, according to the stories, she did not despair. She did not say, well, I can't make him whole, so I give up. Instead, she crafted one from gold. She used her magic, her breath, her words of power to create what was missing. This is the secret. Feminine power does not simply recover what was lost. It creates what is needed. And this always reminds me, though I'm probably going to butcher this word, of the Japanese art of putting things together with gold. Kintsugi? I think it's the first one. But it means golden joinery. And it's where broken pottery isn't thrown out or hidden, but it's repaired with lacquered gold. And that highlights the cracks as beautiful, unique features, embracing resiliency. And that's what Isis does. She reassembled Osiris not to restore the old order, but to birth something new, their son Horus, conceived through an act of magic with a resurrected beloved. And I'm skipping over some stuff here. Her story's really long, and she goes on so many beautiful journeys, and she has a sister who helps her at places. But essentially, the biggest part of Isis is resurrection magic and Great Mother. And Horus is her son. And she raised Horus in the hidden marshes, protecting him, teaching him strategy and the arts of power. She knew that to overthrow Set, her brother-in-law, and the old patriarchal violence, required a new kind of masculine energy. One birthed from feminine magic, raised in secret, taught to honor the mother. And Isis was a single mother, because she did resurrect Osiris to conceive Horus, but they only had a day. And then Osiris became king of the underworld, which is why Isis is able to kind of travel between Earth and the underworld. And then she has these great, beautiful wings, so she also can fly up to the heavens. So she's a great energy when you're trying to move through all three, right? Heaven, earth, underworld. That's Isis. She accesses all of them. But even this story, as beautiful as it is, misses the deeper truth. Isis's real power was never about Osiris or Horus. It was about herself. And here's one story. She tricked the great god Ra, who was the sun god, the most powerful deity in the Egyptian pantheon, into revealing his secret name. And when she did that, she gained power over life and death itself. She didn't do this through force, but through wisdom. She knew that all power depends on being named, that to know the true name is to understand the essence, to have access to the source. And you can think about this in shadow work, right? Like once we name our shadows, they no longer have power over us. And once Isis knew Ra's secret name, she became more powerful than him. Isis became the goddess of 10,000 names because she understood that identity is fluid, that power takes many forms, that transformation requires multiple faces. She was mother and maiden, mourner and magician, throne and crowned one, devoted and devastatingly independent. And the Greeks and Romans tried to absorb her, make her serve their empires to fit her into their little categories. But Isis remained herself, scattered across cultures like Osiris across Egypt, yet always whole, always gathering her people to her mysteries, always teaching the magic of reassembly. And there's something that I'll talk about in maybe next season or the following one, but there's a whole lineage called the Isis Priestess lineage. And these are women who are descended from women or who had past lives as women who studied the Isis mysteries. And there are so many mysteries, but this magic of reassembly, of resurrection, of soul retrieval, really is what we're talking about here. This is Isis, not the diminished goddess of patriarchal mythology, but the throne herself, the great healer, the great mother, the one who gathers, the one who resurrects, and the one who creates what's missing with gold. The one who loves wholly and searches fiercely, the one who holds 10,000 names and answers to them all. So what is the magic of reassembly? What is Isis actually teaching? When you've been shattered by trauma, by loss, by betrayal, by initiation, there's this immediate impulse to try to put yourself back together exactly as you were before, to recover what was lost in order to return to who you used to be. But Isis teaches something different. She teaches that reassembly is not restoration, it's resurrection. And resurrection means you don't come back the same. When Isis gathered the pieces of Osiris, she didn't just glue them back together and call it done. She reassembled him with magic. She breathed life into him. She created what was missing. And what emerged was not the old Osiris, but something new. A god who could walk between the worlds of the living and the dead. One who could rule the underworld. Who had been transformed by death itself. And that's why Osiris, who was originally like the first king of Egypt, but we usually say that about Horus, but Osiris was essentially given the throne of Egypt by the two original Egyptian deities. They had four kids, Isis, Osiris, Set, and Nephthys, whose name I'm definitely messing up again. But essentially, Osiris was meant to rule over Earth. And Set was jealous. Set was meant to rule over the underworld. And he killed Osiris again and again. And he tried a few different ways. But this final disassembly was his last one. And that was for him to rule over Earth and Egypt. And so their son Horus eventually overthrew Set and became the first king of Egypt, in a way. But it's kind of like who's first. But Osiris became king of the underworld, ruler of the underworld, because he was transformed by death itself, not because it was given to him because he earned it. And that's how Horus is first king too. It wasn't given to him, he earned it. And what happened to Osiris? That's what happens when you reassemble yourself after shattering. You don't become who you were. You become someone new. Someone who's been through death and knows the other side. Someone who carries the wisdom of fragmentation and wholeness simultaneously. And here's another piece. Sometimes you can't find all the parts. Sometimes pieces are gone, consumed by the river, lost to time, taken by people or circumstances you can't recover them from. Isis teaches you that when you can't find what's missing, you create it. You craft it from gold. You use your magic to make what's needed. And in practical terms, this might look like crafting new beliefs when old ones were shattered. Building new relationships when old ones were lost. Discovering new parts of yourself as old identities die. Or generating new sources of power when old ones were taken. This is what trauma therapists call post-traumatic growth. not just recovering from trauma, but becoming transformed by it in ways that wouldn't have been possible without the shattering. The magic isn't in recovering the exact piece that was lost. The magic is in recognizing that you have the power to create what you need, that you are not dependent on finding everything that was scattered, that you can reassemble yourself with what you have and what you make. This is resurrection. This is Isis magic. This is the work of becoming whole, not by returning to the past, but by gathering the pieces and creating something entirely new. So after the last bonus episode, where I claimed myself as therapist and priestess, part of the intention of that was to talk a little bit more about psychology on here as well. So let's talk about what happens psychologically when you fragment. So when you experience trauma, especially complex trauma, relational trauma, or developmental trauma, your psyche does something brilliant to survive. It splits. Parts of you go into exile, other parts become protectors. This is what internal family systems therapy maps. The way we fragment into parts to cope with what's too much to hold all at once. And there are other parts systems. Gestalt has parts frameworks, and of course, Carl Jung has parts frameworks, and that's a lot of what we work with here. But you might have a part that carries all your rage, exiled rage, because it wasn't safe. Rage isn't safe. A part that's frozen in the moment of trauma, also known as stuck in implicit memory. Maybe you have a part that's hypervigilant, always scanning for danger. Your protector. And maybe there's a part that people pleases to keep you safe. Another protector. These aren't metaphors. Brain imaging shows us that when trauma survivors access different parts, different neural networks light up. You're not making this up. You are fragmented. Your nervous system adapted by splitting. And here's what's important. Those parts don't just disappear when the danger passes. They stay active. They keep protecting you from threats that may no longer exist. They keep carrying burdens that aren't yours to carry. Isis work, the work of reassembly, is about gathering those parts. It's internal family systems meets goddess magic. It's saying, thank you for protecting me. Thank you for holding this burden, but I can hold it now. You can come home. And when Isis gathers the pieces of Osiris, she's doing parts work. She's doing soul retrieval from a shamanic lens, and she's doing integration. And the psychology backs this up, because healing from fragmentation requires acknowledging the parts, which is naming what's been scattered, creating safety in your nervous system so that parts feel safe enough to emerge, and then witnessing each part without judgment, which Isis holds space for in her loving, motherly energy, and integrating those parts back into wholeness, reassembly. And that's why talk therapy alone often isn't enough. One can understand our fragmentation intellectually, but until you work with it somatically, until you feel the parts in your body, until you let them speak through you, until you gather them experientially, the integration doesn't complete. And Isis is the goddess who teaches us the somatic psychology of reassembly. I know, what a phrase, but I get to say it now. And she shows us that healing fragmentation is embodied work, ancestral work, magic work, and it's backed by neuroscience. And there's another layer to Isis. There's so many layers to Isis. I could do an entire season on Isis, honestly. But there's another layer to Isis work that's essential. She doesn't just reassemble your personal fragments. She gathers your ancestral fragments too. When you've been shattered, it's never, or rarely, but I'm almost willing to say never, it's never just your trauma, your loss, your fragmentation. You're also carrying the shattering of your lineage, the trauma your ancestors endured, the parts of them that got lost or exiled or destroyed. And those ancestral fragments live in your body, in your nervous system, in your patterns of attachment, your beliefs about safety, your relationship to power and love and belonging. Isis is a mother goddess, but not just in the I nurture my child way. She's the great mother who tends to lineages, who heals genealogies, who gathers not just your scattered pieces, but the scattered pieces of your ancestors. This is deep soul retrieval work. This is going back through the lineage, through your mother's line, your father's line, your adoptive line if you're adopted, all the lines that flow through you, and gathering what was lost. Clearing patterns that have been passed down, healing wounds that predate your birth. And when you work with Isis this way, you're not just healing yourself. You're healing backward through time. You're reassembling your ancestors. You're clearing the lineage so that the pattern doesn't continue forward through your children, your students, the people you love and touch. This is mother work, not maiden work. The maiden heals herself, which is really important, and that's why it's part of the spiral. But the mother heals the lineage. And Isis shows you how to do it. She shows you how to hold space for ancestral grief, ancestral rage, ancestral loss. She shows you how to gather those fragments somatically, how to feel them in your body, how to let them move through you, how to vocalize them out. Because healing isn't just mental or emotional. It's embodied, it's somatic. The trauma lives in the body, and the healing has to move through the body too. This is what somatic psychology teaches us, what Peter Levine calls completing the stress cycle, what Bessel van der Kolk means when he says the body keeps the score. A lot of you have probably heard of that book. Trauma gets stored in your nervous system, in your fascia, in the implicit memory of your body. And ancestral trauma, that gets passed down through epigenetics, through attachment patterns, through the nervous system states your mother held while pregnant with you. And actually, you were an egg in your grandmother as well. So her nervous system state is in you. That level of directly too, which is just so cool. But Isis work is somatic trauma healing at the lineage level. It's not just understanding your wounds intellectually, it's feeling them, moving them, releasing them through the body. Isis is the one who sits with you while you do this work. She's the mothering presence that holds space while you wail, while you shake, while you vocalize the ancestral pain out of your body. She doesn't fix it for you. She witnesses it. She holds you. She reminds you that you have the magic to clear this pattern, to gather these fragments, to reassemble your lineage into wholeness. So when I call myself a priestess, I usually say I'm a priestess of Lilith and Isis because they're the two that I asked permission from directly. And I consider myself within the Isis priestess lineage. But I didn't know this until I began my journey with Isis. And I was drawn to Egypt and Egyptian lore for a long time. I'm a believer in past lives. You can be or you cannot be. But since I started working with Isis, it's just been so familiar. And Isis, she's taught me so much about what I know of reassembly, personally and ancestrally. And so about a year ago, I was deep in attachment healing work. I'd been working on my attachment patterns for a while. And by a while, I mean like a decade. The ways I push people away, the ways I cling, the fear of abandonment, the difficulty trusting that people will stay. And I knew that this wound ran deep. Deeper than my personal history. It ran through my ancestry. I'm adopted, and so I carry 4 lineages in my body. My birth mother's line, my birth father's line, and both of my parents' lines. And the wound of abandonment, the mother wound, the witch wound, they run through all those lines in some way, shape, or form, the deeper I look at it. But especially through my Irish and Celtic ancestry. And so I went into a plant medicine journey a legal natural medicine ceremony here in Colorado where such healing work's permitted, with the intention of working with Isis. And I'd done an introductory meditation with her before the journey, and I felt drawn to her mothering presence. And I'm going to send you that meditation on our Patreon for you. And so when the journey began, I was pulled into another world, into a place where Isis lives. And I saw her walking toward me in the desert, this kind of oasis behind her, with her big black wings spread out. And her presence was so comforting. She was just so motherly and so warm. And she was so powerful at the same time. To me, she felt like a way that I could finally identify with mother. Like the mother I would strive to be. But also, yeah, the one my little parts needed me to be for myself, right? The one who sees you, who holds you, who doesn't ever leave. And I realized that part of what I was healing was the mother wound from adoption, the primal wound of being separated from my birth mother. And that wound contributes to my attachment struggles, the fear that if I let people in, they'll leave, that I'm not worth staying for, even though logically I know this isn't true. And what Isis showed me was that this wasn't just my wound. This was an ancestral wound. This was the mother wound running through my lineage. Mothers separated from children. And that means children abandoned literally or emotionally, right? So many children do not get their emotional needs met. And that cycle repeating generation after generation. And Isis guided me into the healing. And at one point in the journey, I invited Isis into my body, into my heart. And I pictured myself standing in this pyramid of light. And her sacred symbol, the Tayet, the knot of Isis, was spiraling and swirling down from above, from the heavens, in this like golden ray. And it landed in my chest. And it exploded into this warm, golden light as it spun. Like she was filling me with her presence, her mothering, her magic. And then the real work began. I felt this black void in my belly, like a black hole. But it was like this dense, heavy, dark thing. And Isis was there guiding me, holding space. And I knew this is the ancestral wound. This is the mother wound. This is the lineage pattern I'm here to clear. And it wasn't just the mother wound, and I want to make this clear. And this is some of the abandonment wound too that I was carrying. It's this piece of the witch wound, which we'll talk about later. But that was in this too. That was in this same lineage. And they were really intertwined, which was so interesting. But we're going to have a whole episode on the witch wound. I'm going to have a friend come on and we'll have a good conversation about that. But in this moment, during this journey, that black void slowly started to kind of congeal, condense, make itself smaller. And it gathered itself into a tiny, tight ball in my belly, like a really dense piece of charcoal or something. And I knew I had to get it out. So I vocalized it, which I'd like really not done that much of. I'm not a singer. Typically I like move things physically by moving my body, but this really wanted to come out of the throat. And so I made these like primal guttural sounds I didn't know I could make that came from deep in my body, from my ancestors, from the wound itself. And I felt it moving up and out through my belly, through my throat, out of my mouth, almost like that Harry Potter moment, you know, like when your soul leaves, except it wasn't my soul. It was this like black ancestral wound. And Isis was there the whole time, witnessing, holding, saying, yes, you can do this. This is your magic. This is soul retrieval. This is lineage clearing. And when it was done, when the sound had moved through me and out of me, I felt empty, but not hollow. Empty like space had been created, like I'd cleared something that had been stuck for generations. And Isis was there holding me. What I was doing in that moment, the vocalization, the somatic release, that's cathartic discharge. I wasn't regulating or managing the activation. I was fully immersed in it, letting it move through me completely. And this is what happens in deep ceremonial work, in some forms of body psychotherapy, and in primal therapies. And you enter the activation fully. You let it peak and you vocalize or move it out. I did this alone in ceremony, but I don't recommend that for most people. Without proper support, training, or a strong enough container, cathartic release can re-traumatize. What made it safe for me was the medicine itself holding the container, my years of somatic training, and Isis's presence guiding the process. When the container is strong enough, your body knows how to discharge what's been held for generations. And cathartic release is not the only way. You can do this in titrated ways, in small moments. And typically, that is my recommendation. And everyone's different. I can't recommend anything to you because I don't know you and your exact history and your ability to hold a container. Only you know that, and only the practitioners that you work with know that. So if you're interested, I suggest finding a somatic therapist or a certified natural medicine facilitator if you're in a state where that's currently an option, one that's licensed. And since that journey, though, I've continued to work with Isis. When I need a mothering presence, she's the goddess I turn to. When I'm doing healing work, whether for myself or with the people I work with, I sometimes feel her coming through me, channeling through me. And it feels so natural, like I've worked with her over many, many lifetimes. Like she's been teaching me this magic of reassembly across incarnations. And then this year, 7 months ago now, I had another Isis initiation, a physical one. I fell 75 feet while rappelling. My equipment failed. I sustained third-degree burns on both hands. I needed 22 skin grafts, 11 on each hand. We can talk about the numerology of that next episode. But they're full-thickness grafts. And the doctors told me they almost never do full-thickness grafts on hands. My occupational therapist at the burn clinic had to learn to work with them differently because full-thickness grafts on hands are so rare. And I was expected to need compression gloves for a year, possibly laser scar treatment after that. I wore compression gloves for 3 months. And while scar treatment could maybe make my hands prettier, I don't particularly care about that. I wear my scars proudly. What I do care about is having full range of motion. And miraculously, I do. I'm not going to go into the full story here. We'll get into that in the next episode. But what I will say is this. There's something magic in my healing process. And I know it's because Isis is with me and integrated into me. Because I've been doing the reassembly work. Not just mentally or spiritually, but physically. Gathering the pieces, creating what's missing, letting my body remember its wholeness. That's Isis magic. That's the power of the great assembler. She doesn't just heal your soul. She heals your body. She heals your lineage. She teaches you that nothing is ever truly lost. It's just waiting to be remembered, to be gathered, to be made whole. Oh gosh, and I'm talking as fast as I can, but this is probably already one of our longest episodes thus far, and that's not surprising. But I do want to talk about how you actually work with Isis. How do you practice the magic of reassembly? And so first you have to acknowledge what's been scattered. What parts of yourself did you lose? When did the fragmentation happen? Maybe it was trauma. Maybe it was a relationship ending. Maybe it was a death, a loss, a betrayal. Maybe it was a slow erosion over years, giving pieces of yourself away to keep others comfortable, losing parts of yourself to survive. Isis asks you, what are the pieces? Can you name them? Then you gather. This is the work. You go looking for what was lost. Sometimes you find it in the memories, in your body, in relationships, in practices that bring you back to yourself. Sometimes you have to create it, discovering new parts of yourself, building new sources of power, creating what's missing from gold. The gathering is somatic. It's embodied. You can't just think your way into wholeness. You have to feel it. You have to let your body remember. You might shake, cry, vocalize, move. You might need to do breath work, somatic practice, go to therapy, do a ritual, whatever helps you access the fragments stored in your body. And throughout the process, Isis is still there. She's the mothering presence that witnesses your reassembly. She doesn't do it for you. She holds space while you do the work. She reminds you that you have the magic, that you are the magic. You can call on her when you're healing from fragmentation or trauma. You're doing ancestral or lineage work, resurrecting something that died, a project, a dream, a part of yourself. You can call on her when you need to create what's missing instead of just recovering what was lost, or when you need a mothering presence that sees you and holds you. Isis is devotion to wholeness, not the wholeness you had before, but the wholeness you're becoming. The reassembled you, the resurrected you. The you that's been through death and knows how to gather the pieces and make yourself whole again. And so for our closing practice, let's do a contemplative practice. And this is a contemplative practice, not a therapeutic intervention. If you're currently in crisis or dealing with acute trauma, please work with a licensed provider instead of doing this meditation practice alone. All right, so let's close with that Isis practice, gathering your fragments, right? So if you're not driving, close your eyes and then just take a deep breath. Good. Now take one more. And keep breathing as you imagine yourself standing in a vast space. And scattered around you, you see pieces, parts, fragments of yourself. Pieces you lost, pieces you gave away, pieces that were taken. You don't have to know what each piece is, just notice them. Now imagine Isis standing behind you. She's holding a golden basket, and she says, "Let's gather them." And so start walking through this space, picking up the pieces. Each one you touch, you feel something. Maybe it's a memory, maybe an emotion, maybe just a sense of recognition. This is mine, this belongs to me. And you don't have to linger too long right now, but just placing each piece that you find in the basket. Remembering Isis is with you, guiding you, witnessing. And if there's a piece that you can't find or that's too hard to grasp right now, something that's lost, imagine Isis handing you a small lump of gold, and she says, "Create it. You have the power to make what's missing." And so just take this lump of gold and feel it in your hands. Let yourself play with it. Feel yourself shape it into what you need. And place it in the basket with the other pieces. When you've gathered everything you can, just pause and look at Isis. Her eyes are dark with the stars in them. They contain the secrets of the universe. And her smile is so kind and safe. And Isis lifts the basket, turning it to liquid, and she pours the contents of the basket over you. All the fragments, all the pieces lost and created. They swirl around you like liquid gold, and they sink into your body, reassembling, integrating, filling the cracks, making you whole. You're not who you were, you're someone new. Someone who's been scattered and gathered. Someone who knows the magic of resurrection. Take another deep breath. And then take one more. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Everything we explore here lives in practice. The links in our bio and in this episode for our free website resources, where you'll find our ritual grimoire, embodiment library, and a few online workshops diving deeper into the work. If this work's serving you and you want to support the podcast, I have a Patreon where you get monthly new moon rituals, the ability to list your business in our Coven shop, and more. And on Patreon, I will be posting the link to the Isis meditation that I did a year ago to start my own journey with her a little deeper. And that link for our Patreon is also in our bio. And your support really just helps me keep creating this content and building the Coven. I cannot say enough how much it means. Every comment, every review, every time you send this to people. It validates that this work is meaningful. And my goal is to reach the people who are ready for this medicine. So if you're loving the podcast, please leave a review and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Trust the spiral. This podcast offers spiritual and psychological education and priestess wisdom. This is not therapy, counseling, or mental health treatment. If you need mental health support, please contact a licensed provider. In a mental health emergency in the U.S., call 988.